up, everybody? It's Katie from Hollaback Pearl, and today I'm going to teach you how to make a yarn ball. So when you buy yarn, oftentimes it will come like this, and this is called a skein of yarn. It's very fancy. And if you are lucky, if you are one of the chosen few that the gods have blessed, you will be able to find the end of the yarn inside this yarn skein. Unfortunately, that is something that not many of us are able to find because it's probably a trade secret, I don't know. If you are lucky, you can smush. You can put your right hand on the bottom of the skein, your left hand on the top of the skein. The label will be in the middle, and you can push, 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 smash, 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 and sometimes the end of the yarn will reveal itself at the inside the yarn skein. I'm sorry, it doesn't happen all the time. The way that I usually do it, because it's the easiest and sometimes the only way, is you take the wrapper and you rip it off. You may want to keep the wrapper because it tells you exactly what the yarn ball or what the yarn is made out of and the size needle or hook that you may need. If not, you can chuck it because, you know what, throw caution to the wind, friends. Then you can look around the skein, and if you take your hand and just feel around it, you'll be able to find the end of the yarn. When that happens, you can drop the skein on the floor. Boop. Granted, the floor is not dirty because you don't want your yarn to get dirty. If your floor is dirty or if you're outside, because sometimes I like to roll yarn outside, I will take the skein and place it into a cardboard box or a bucket, and that is a nice way too because then your skein doesn't run away, especially if you have a hard time finding it because it can wrap around a table or something. So I have the end of my yarn string in my left hand. I am going to put my left pointer finger and my left middle finger and my left thumb. I am going to grab the end of the yarn with those three fingers. It ain't going anywhere. My right hand I'm going to use to wrap the yarn around my fingers of my left hand. I'm going to wrap around 10-15 times. Make sure it's a nice thick layer. As you do this, your skein may bounce around. That's why it's kind of nice to have it in a box. Okay? Once you've got a nice little thick layer there of yarn, about 15 wraps around, you can take your fingers out and now you have this kind of like loop of yarn. And you can smash it down with your fingers again, and you're gonna wrap around it the opposite direction now. So you're gonna take your yarn and wrap around now the center of where that hole was. Wrap, 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 10-15 times, and stop. You're going to take your fingers and yarn, you're gonna twist it around again, and now you're gonna wrap around the opposite way again. And as you're doing this, you are basically just making the yarn kind of smashed into a ball shape. You're gonna stop, twist around again, and wrap around, going around the center again, and stop. Take your fingers, twist, wrap around again, stop, twist, wrap around again. And you're going to be doing this over and over and over again. And as you're stopping and twisting the ball and wrapping around the opposite way, your skein is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, I am wrapping around in the exact same clockwise motion. I am just turning the ball that is increasing in my left hand. My right hand is continually wrapping around in a clockwise motion. I just occasionally stop and twist the ball that is forming in my left hand. Okay? Now, if your ball is starting to fall apart a little bit in your left hand, you can wrap around more than the 15 that I recommended. I mean, it's really up to you and what your ball needs. So, or really how thick your yarn is. If I'm using a very, very bulky yarn, I might only, dropped it. I might only be wrapping it around like 5 times, depending on how thick it is, right? All right, so I'm just gonna keep going and going and going. And my friends, that is how you make a yarn ball. If you come to the point where your yarn ball stops because you have a knot in the skein of yarn, it's okay, just stop what you're doing, put the yarn ball down, take the skein in your hand and feel where it's a little tight. Gently lift it up, stretch it out, Don't go like over the top and pull all the way because you don't want it to get more knots, but you can easily stretch it out a little bit. Put the skein back down and it should freely move again. Okay, so you're going to just continue to wind, and at the end of the skein of yarn, oftentimes you will come to some knots, and that's okay. That's totally normal. Do not worry, okay? So I'm just going to keep winding up here. When you come to the very, very end, sometimes there's like a lot of knots. You can stretch them out. Try to feel and untangle as best you can. And if worse comes to worse and you just have the biggest knot in the world and you have to cut it off, it's okay. I've been there too. We all do it. Just cut it, and when you untangle your other bits of tangled mess, you can just double knot your yarn back together, and it will totally be usable when you're creating your crochet or knitting or weaving, whatever you may have to do. I got like a big mess going on here. It's okay. All right, so I'm gonna try to untangle this a little bit. If you can see, I've got like the yarn's kind of wrapped around itself here, so I need to be very gentle and pick apart the yarn as best I can. It looks like the yarn end has tangled in upon itself. When you take your yarn from the center of the skein, where I know it's very difficult to find in the center of it, but when you do that, you have less tangles in the back end. Your tangles generally happen in the front end if you do that. So, all right, it looks like I'm good to go. So I'm gonna wrap the very last bit of my yarn here. And now that I have the end of my yarn ball, I'm gonna take the very, very end of the yarn. I'm gonna wrap it around the ball, and when I feel like the yarn end is touching the yarn ball, I can lift up a section of the yarn that is wrapped around the ball, and I can tuck the end into it, and that way it will stay. And there's your yarn ball. Great for storage, great for working with. Excellent. Have a beautiful day, friends, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. See you later.